Lars, I'm so pumped that you're here today. We've been friends for a super long time. We're going to be talking about entrepreneurism. We're going to be talking about, working for other people a little bit. And most importantly, we're going to talk about ministry as a part of your business. But tell me, even though we've been around each other a long time, tell me something I don't know about you.
Something you don't know about me.
I feel like I know a lot.
I'm first generation Swedish American. Did you know that?
No.
Both my parents moved here in their early 20s from Sweden. So I guess that's
I didn't
one.
know that.
Yep, that's one. So
you're the first American born in your family?
Yep, first American born in my family.
That's awesome. So your parents are immigrants, just like
I worked
my
as a carpenter for 6 months after I left a Wall Street job. That's another thing you didn't know about me.
I did not know that.
Yep.
I was a carpenter out of high school.
Yep, and that's before I knew that Jesus was a carpenter.
So, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You follow in his footsteps. Right. So tell me about your business. What do you do?
So, my current business is just helping real estate agents, residential real estate agents. That industry has a tendency to just suck the life out of the agent. So if they get busy enough where they're actually selling homes consistently, it will creep into their personal life and their physical bodies will suffer and all of that. So my focus is on helping agents scale their businesses, but to do it in a way where they're not going to have to grind every day and lose their life in the process. So it's like business coaching for real estate agents.
That's awesome. I have a question on real estate agents. Do most real estate agents start there, or do they work for somebody else? Or because most real estate agents work for themselves, or no?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of an odd industry. So there's all these brokerages that, recruit these agents in, and generally the brokerage doesn't have like the solution. They don't actually have like a path to growing their business. Most of their models, it won't benefit the brokerage for the agent to sell 50 homes. That's where the good money starts in real estate. I mean, 2% of agents will only 2% sell more than 25 homes.
Really?
Yeah. So they're independent contractors, hanging their licenses with these brokerages, but the brokerages ultimately don't give them the path to growing their business, and that's where I come in. Exactly.
But these agents, do they out of college just start selling homes, or they go have another career first?
Yeah, it's a really low bar to get into real estate. So you'd be surprised at the different ways. I would say most real estate agents, I don't know the stat right now, but at one point it was, second income in the household, typically a later 50s female. Like that was the demographic. I think it's shifting now because there's a lot of folks coming in that choose it as a career, and they're gonna do the right things and do it correctly out of the gate and treat it like a business. But generally, it's been an industry of don't need the money, a part-time agent. If the deals come in from their friends and family, that's fine. And my approach is how to really professionalize it and turn it into an actual business. Lead gen, lead conversion, tracking your numbers.
Yeah, I love what you do. I never thought of this before. Is there a major in school?
There are majors in school around like real estate development,
but not like residential sales.
I doubt it. I mean,
I've never talked to anybody who's like, yeah, I'm going into residential sales. I'm taking my major.
No, I think it's a default. It's like someone
so that's that bar, that low job. Bar.
Yeah. Like I was talking to a guy. He was 32 years as a CIO for like some regional bank or something. And he got fired from that, and he became a real estate agent because his brother's a real estate agent.
And he figured he can get some training.
So it's like, okay.
So the fact that your business exists will help agents and people that need to buy and sell homes like me. So we're not just, some guy picking up a part-time job that's going to turn into a career, and doesn't really understand the business, but he knows, you need a house and I'll go find some houses, and that's how it works out.
Yeah, it's pretty haphazard the way it's done traditionally. So ours is soup to nuts client care, how to elevate the client care experience and make sure you show up professional, and, you've got technology that you're actually using.
Is there like a Lars certification, like trained advisor, So
no, essentially though, I mean, it's real estate B school. So it's business school for real estate agents. So it is sort of a school that teaches business to.
So somebody like watching this has to know like, hey, he's a B school certified, real estate
Yeah, I
agent.
haven't. I mean, now I'm just thinking maybe that is an angle at some point.
That's funny. All right. So why do you think certain people are comfortable working for somebody else while other people are super comfortable doing their own thing? Because you worked for somebody else before you did your own, right?
Yeah. So coming out of college, I had an engineering undergrad. My first job was working for a utility company, and
Before you became a carpenter?
before I became a carpenter. And I knew, my journey in faith, my faith journey started, even though it was probably 10 years after that, I came to know Jesus. My faith journey probably started one day, and this fits into your question. I left. I remember walking out of this job, and my boss I was like 21, 22. My boss was 55 years old. His name was Don. Pocket protector. This guy is counting light bulbs.
Why did that make the story?
Engineer, pocket protector. He just fit the mold. I promise you, if you saw Don, you would recognize it. And I remember leaving the building, the office building, and asking myself that there has to be more to life than this.
Than pocket protectors.
Than like counting light bulbs and then going back to the office and putting those light bulb counts into a spreadsheet and calculating energy savings. And I'm like, this is mind numbing. Like there's no way I could do this. And so I think that planted the seed.
So the light bulb came on?
The light bulb, I saw what you did there. The light bulb came on. But it also like forced me into this. This was in New Jersey, and I remember I signed up for a practical philosophy course.
Really?
In New York City, and I was not raised with any faith whatsoever, but I kind of got on this journey of like, what is the meaning of life? It cannot be to work, just a 9-to-5 job. And so I think in my heart at that time was, the seeds of entrepreneurship. Even though it took me, so I was 22. I didn't get into real estate until I was like 32. So it took me about 10 or so years to kind of flip the switch. But I ended up working took a Wall Street job, and then I was able to see kind of the inside workings of companies, and it was mergers and acquisitions, and how are these companies valued, and that really got me on this trajectory. And then I worked for a company for 7 years in acquisitions and strategy. We acquired like 42 businesses. I traveled to like 30 countries around the world.
Oh, wow.
And so pretty cool experience set. And then I just got into investing in real estate. And then I met my broker, sort of sold me into getting my license. And he's like, you should at least not have to pay commissions on these deals. I acquired like 10 properties or something in a short period of time. So that's kind of the journey. But I think the seeds of my faith were planted along with the seeds of, I just can't work for these guys. I mean, when I was recruited from New Jersey to Charlotte, the guy that I worked for had 33 years in the business in this one company. And he had just gotten to the point where he was running one of 3 divisions, and he was getting ready to retire. And he had just bought his retirement home in Hilton Head, I think it was Sea Pines. And he finds out he has pancreatic cancer. He's in his early 60s, and he was dead 4 months later.
Oof.
So, when I think of Don with the pocket protector, and me being 22 and 33 years from now, I can be Don. Or if it was George here in Charlotte that recruited me from New Jersey, same company, just a corporate relo. Took him 33, I never did the math on that, but took him 33 years to get to a position where he's finally ready to unplug and not give his life to this company, working all the hours and doing all the things. And so I think it was seeing those different things. And in my Wall Street job, I worked with a guy, youngest guy to ever get a 7-figure bonus. He was a VP, so he was pretty low on the chain of investment banking, the hierarchy. And he was at least 150 pounds overweight. He lived at the office, but he was the man. His name was Fred.
Fred the man.
Fred the man. And I just knew I didn't want to be him. I knew I didn't want to be Don. Then I took this, job on Wall Street that doubled my income. I remember my bonus was more than I made at my engineering job.
Wow.
Just my annual bonus. And I remember walking I hadn't even cashed the check yet. It was the day we got our bonuses, and I just gave my notice. I'm like, I cannot be Fred. And then I became a
Was it
carpenter.
the weight thing, or was
It was just he lived at the office, and I'm like, I don't care what, even if I would get $1 million bonus, I don't want to do what he's doing.
Because you're exchanging your life.
You're totally
for money.
giving your life away to your job. So I had these experiences, and then I worked 6 months as a carpenter, and that guy was great. He worked on like
You
high
went
end
from Wall Street to
carpentry.
carpentry.
I opened up the newspaper. And I just picked
This
an
is
ad
super fascinating.
to be an assistant, a carpenter's assistant.
The life of a real estate agent.
That's it. And then I there was no freedom in that, right? So he was just a single man operation doing high end kitchen and bathroom renovations, and I'm like, I don't want to do this. And so then I went into Curtis Wright, which brought me to Charlotte, met my wife, started investing in real estate, and then I became a real estate agent.
And then you
That's
became
a really
real
long
estate
answer.
agent coach.
Yeah, and then I figured out some things in my real estate business that
So you blew it up. You did.
allowed me to scale really, really quickly, very simply but quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And
it was the pocket protector job.
It was all
he
those
helped
guys.
you understand. There's that engineering background that he helped you build a process to scale.
Probably that guy.
I bet you it was.
Yeah.
It's all them light bulbs.
But even, what's funny, even my first broker, so the first company I hung my license with in real estate, because I didn't have this vision of scaling my real estate business.
Yeah, not when you started. Yeah.
But TJ was his name. He's the guy that helped me acquire these rental properties and kind of introduced me into the concept of getting my real estate license. I saw him, he had 20 agents at his firm, and he was even working every evening and weekend.
Jeez.
So there was no freedom in the way that he did it. So when I left that firm and I decided that I was going to build a business, but I didn't want to give away my evenings and weekends, which is really, really uncommon in the real estate industry.
All right. So then where I really want to focus the rest of our discussion is understanding the introduction of business or of ministry into your business, which you kind of laid a little bit of the foundation of your faith, and the challenges behind that. In today's society, we're not necessarily faith happy. You like the new Speaker of the House, all you see is like, well, all the news on him is negative publicity about his faith, because he's a man of faith. But if he was like a Satan worshiper, you probably wouldn't see anything. But the fact that, he's got faith in his life, how he voted because it was a part of his faith. So for a business owner, there's a little bit of that fear where the social norms challenge, our outward desire or inward desire to bring business into, or to bring ministry into our faith. Gosh, let me try that again, to bring ministry into our business. So help me understand, like, how far along were you on business before, in your business, whether it was just being an agent or your B school training where you are now, before you're like, hey, let me bring my faith in, let me wear it on my sleeve, let it be a big part of my business. What was that journey like?
Yeah, so I got into real estate in 2007, right before the Great Recession. So
You're the reason.
Yeah, I'm the reason. Right?
You started it.
3 months after I got into real estate, like inventory in our market, like went straight through the roof.
Parallel.
There's a parallel. 100%. And usually a chart going up and to the right is good, but not when like inventory is just piling up.
Not when you start in that business.
No. So 2007, so 2009, I accepted Jesus. And so nothing as a kid, no foundation in anything. I mean, we went to church on Easter. I honestly didn't know why we were going. I know it sounds like crazy, but as a kid, I just knew we got dressed up. We would go to church. It was not like a church that was inspiring. Yeah, so had really no basis in my faith whatsoever, except this whole Clinton Inn and mothballs recollection. So being new to all of it and wanting to sort of soak it in. And at this time, married for 3 years. Anders is like 2 years old, our first child. A couple miscarriages. Kendall, our second child, April 2010. So newish husband, new dad,
Newish.
and I figured out how to sell a lot of homes, and so it was a little bit sideways. I was working all the days,
Doing all the things you didn't want to do.
all the 8 days of the week. I could look back now and
8 days a week.
Yeah, it was fully 8 days a week. So as my faith is growing, as I'm building the business, the motivation really was that I wanted to be a good husband and a good dad. And it probably wasn't until I have this personality trait, and I think it's common with entrepreneurs, that you kind of get to a point in a business where you get a little bit like, what's the next thing? And if I don't know, I mean, I don't think I had a concept of how to integrate the two. We were at C12 yesterday, and we were kind of talking about who we put ourselves in the center, and we put our faith on one of the the hub and spoke, whatever. One of the spokes is our faith. One of the spokes is our wife. One of the spokes is our kids, and then our business. And that's definitely how I was running with it. So I would just go to church and try to do some stuff and sort of figure out my faith.
How could you make each aspect of your life have a little bit more God, is what you were saying?
Not at that time.
Oh.
So this was like...
Oh, you just added God.
Imagine in your 30s, you have no idea who Jesus is. And then all of a sudden, your combination of Anders being born, and I can look back on, a few people in my life that planted seeds, but all of a sudden you're like, this is the thing. When I was walking out of the office at 21, 22, there has to be more to life. That was the thing. And so, but then it's a journey. Like, you don't know anything.
Yep.
You've accepted Jesus, but what does it mean? So your journey is different than my journey. But if you can imagine not knowing anything about the Bible and reading the Bible, and I joined a men's group. I was in a men's group for 8 years, and there was a couple other business owners in that group. And then C12, I'm 6 years.
When did you join C12?
6 years ago. Yeah, so January 2018. So that was the only time I had really heard about, really God is the center. It's his business. And what does it even look like to integrate your faith into business?
I didn't know anything about that either until I had joined. I mean, God's always been a part of my life since I was a little kid, but making him a focal point of different aspects of your life or your business is totally different than having just that relationship with God. When you grow a business and that business does something, it's a service, it sells a product, that's your business. But if you're a lover of Jesus and you want to make that a part of your business, that's something completely entirely different. And there's a lot of fear about that. So walk me through that, like, initial, like, how did you, quote unquote, maybe sprinkle a little bit of faith in your business as opposed to going full flown out, like full flesh in, like, it's a big part of my business now. Like, what was that?
Yeah. So when I look back, I'll back up one step. When I think about how I got into real estate and how I was building the business, even after my faith was progressing, it was very self-centered. It was all about, I was figuring out how to get really busy. I was making a lot of money. I needed to hire people to serve me in the business. So even from just a practical standpoint, it wasn't, there was no faith in it at all. There was no leading and loving others, anything. And so I think that was the biggest transformation. It was just internally for me, is that once I knew the whole game was loving and serving others, I was triggered in my business prior to that, where I was just barely getting by, and I was building, and you're so busy and you're still doing transactions, but you're building systems, you're adding people. The business is going great. I mean, I went from 44 transactions my first full year in real estate, which is
way above average.
It's the average agent sells like 7 homes.
Yeah.
And then I did 453 transactions like 5 years later. And I built it out systems, and everyone was doing everything. And I didn't have to do any transactions. So all of that worked, but there was no God in any of it. It was like,
well, you were new to your faith.
I was new to my faith, and I was new to business. And, I this is going to sound horrible. I'm just going to say it, but, people were kind of just Pawns, but almost like a chess game. Not
Yeah.
pawns like a total like use and abuse,
Yeah.
but pretty much it was like a chessboard. And I just needed people to run the things, but there was no care and love for the people. It was like, this is just a business. I love business.
And then bringing your faith into that changed that.
100%. I had a really hard conversation with a top agent. We were both in tears where he had left my company. And he said, man, I'll probably get emotional thinking about it. He has said, at some point, I felt like I was just, he didn't use the word pawn, but I felt like I was just a
number
in the whole cot. Like I wasn't an actual person. He didn't use those words, but he was crying as he was telling me.
Wow. So there was a connection of friendship there, but
100%. We had I took his family to Disney for the first time as like a reward for him succeeding in the business. And we've since maintained our friendship. We were able to work through that. But it was like in C12, I talk about not every once in a while, pretty much like a few times a year, we get like 2x4s over the head. That was probably the biggest 2x4.
About our business.
Yeah. About our and that was probably a massive wake up call. And that was
by somebody working for you.
Yeah, that was willing to share, his experience of me leading a business that he was a major part of. He sold probably 25% of those 400 plus homes.
Whoa.
So he was a major, but in my not faithful, not loving and serving mindset at the time, it was the systems that I built allowed him to achieve. It's like it was still, and this is not the easy part to talk about, it was still about me. And God
changed that.
God totally changed that. Now, I shared my personal testimony with 122 people at the end of one of our digital events.
Yeah.
And I said something, and someone challenged me. One of my coaches now challenged me. He said, God told me that you're supposed to share your testimony at the end of
no pressure
of this digital summit coming up. And I'm like, he did? He's like, I totally get it if you don't want to do it. I'm like, there's no way I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
Right. If God told you, like,
he just
I can't.
threw down the gauntlet.
And, but I remember saying, when I was sharing my testimony, like, my marriage would not make sense without God.
Mm-hmm.
Like me being a parent definitely makes no sense. I've given my kids to God. I'm like, these kids are yours. Like, I can't take credit for like the good
and I'm
thing.
not taking credit for
it. And then the same thing with the business, that it's God's business. Probably in business, I still have a tendency to control and think it's me. I still fall back into that. But now knowing that this is the impact that I'm going to have in people's lives.
Well, that's the sin nature that lives in us is what draws us to ourselves into that. It's all about me, and it's the God in your business. It's the God. It's God in your business that makes it not about you. The challenge is, it sounds like from what I'm hearing from you, is you. The challenge is not making it about Lars. You're not the center, but God's the center.
Mm-hmm.
So how have you been able to take the focus off of you? Because this is business. At the end of the day, it's the person buying the home or selling the home is ultimately getting the benefit. It's not the agent. It's not your employees. It's not even you. Your business exists so that end user, that end customer ultimately is the one that's feeling the greatest. So how have you worked through the challenges of taking it away from this business being about you and your family, or you and your business and your profit, whatever, and making it about ultimately that end person, that end home buyer or seller?
Yeah, and I think less about the home buyer and seller as I do the kids and wife. So say it's a guy that signs up for real estate B school, it's his kids and his wife are going to be able to experience a different way of life because of the work we do with him. And then he's going to be able to service clients at a higher level. But I think more about Like, you know how in business it's like, what's your avatar? So my avatar has a name. His name is Jim. He's,
Wait a minute. We're crossing boundaries right now.
and
You have an avatar?
yeah.
And his name is Jim?
Well, so back in the day, when
Are we in the metaverse right now?
when I started,
what's happening?
When I started the coaching company, they say you come up with a client avatar. You need to be speaking in your marketing, speaking to a specific person. So it was at the time, it was a guy with young kids, like I was when I was scaling my business.
Oh, this isn't you.
No.
Oh,
this is a client avatar.
I was like, what just happened? His name's Jim?
No, it's not
Jimbo.
Jim. And I had done a transaction with him, and we had gotten to know each other, and he shared the fact that he was working all the hours. And, so it's a real person I've been building this thing for and marketing to and speaking the language that would resonate with them so that I could get into their life and I could impact their business. So, but your question was,
what are the challenges you faced?
Yeah.
And how have you overcome them?
It started with
It
started with me, like me and my interaction with the team. So knowing, having this interaction with this agent where we're both crying and he just tells me the truth of how he experienced me in the business, then it was like, this is going to start with me. So my faith is growing. It's this love and serve others. It's the whole game. My heart doesn't feel that every time because when someone on my team messes up, I get triggered. So it was a slow process of just noticing those triggers. I don't know if you've been there where you just feel it and your body starts to boil a little bit and you just sit with it before you like fire off the Slack message.
I'm super emotional. Right. I've been there.
Right. So it started with all of those interactions and then slowing down with my teammates and getting to know what's going on with them and their lives. And then realizing that everyone has big stuff going on. Nobody talks about it. And I'm here I am, pre this transition, I'm so focused on business that I'm not really focusing on the people. So it's this shift of just focusing on the people. Did you ever read the book, Shepherd? It's a fable, something as a shepherd. I have to find it because it's like required reading. I'll find it.
The anticipation's growing.
Yeah, it's really, really good.
Hold, please.
Yeah,
we're gonna
just
search
hold the line.
Live
it'll come up
right now.
Flock, maybe. Anyway, it's a book. It's a fable. Shepherd's in the title. If this guy back here can find it, it'd be helpful.
You're leaving us hanging.
I'll find it because it's really, really
keep
good.
Going. We'll find it. We'll put it in the link.
Yeah. So, and the whole point is that it's this fable. It's this really successful billionaire business guy that is teaching a younger, him essentially, how to run a business and take care of people, and they take care of the clients. And he likens it to, being a shepherd over a flock. And there are times where you have to, have that prod and then the little thing, like you have to tell people what to do and maybe discipline them or, get them back on track. But it's mostly about caring for them and knowing where they're at and inspecting your flock on a daily basis, not like once a quarter, because there's a performance review or whatever. So that thinking really impacted me. And again, I had no faith as a kid. I didn't know the whole game was loving and serving others. I was selfishly building this business for me because I had a really challenging childhood and I didn't want to be poor and I didn't want to not show up like my dad. My dad was unable to show up. So all this stuff is going on all at the same time in my mid-30s into my 40s.
So then walk me through like the benefits of I want two benefits here. I want a benefit for the avatar Jim, your customer, how this transition of you making your business more of a ministry or aspects of ministry, meaning you're bringing God into it. We understand it's changed. It's less about you and your profitability and your business, and it's more about them. How has it benefited them? Like, what are some success stories? And then I'd also like to know how it's changed you, because if it's this, you started this business, you made this business, but you're trying to make it less about you. How has that been a reward or a benefit to you? So let's start with your customer, and then let's back up to you.
Yeah, so there are some practical ways, that I integrate my faith into the way that I teach. But specifically, our industry is all about, like, you just wouldn't know if an agent that sells a lot of homes, if they have any balance at home, if they even have money in the bank, if they're not like pre-diabetic and like they might have a heart attack next week. I talked to a guy. This will be a good example. This was just recently. This guy's out of 175,000 agents for a large global franchise. He's in the top 100.
Whoa.
Top 100. This guy found out that he had on a scan of some kind, that there were signs of cancer. In his mind, it took him 45 days to realize it was totally benign, but in his mind, he thought he was going to die in that time period. 62 years old, it just allowed him to reflect on all of it. So essentially have that moment while you're living, like, I did the whole thing wrong. Regularly, he gets home after midnight. Regularly, he's up before 4 a.m.
They have kids? Or
he has
older kids.
And so I was talking to him as he barely was able to get away to be with his daughter as she had her planned C-section, his first grandchild. So here's a guy, top 100 out of 100,
everything,
gave away his whole life in the process. And then he has this 45-day scare, to live like you were dying, like whoever sings that song. and so that's and I just told the guy, we've got to figure this out. Here's the crazy thing. He didn't have the money to invest in my program.
What's he doing with all his money? Was he not profitable?
I mean, he takes in about $650,000 a year gross. He only nets about $250,000, so he's wasting money on a bunch of stuff that doesn't work. No systems in place. Never sought out a business coach, and so, like, that's an extreme example of how, like, he's the man. He's the man as it comes, as far as like
not the man.
Traditional success goes. But the guy could hardly. He was challenged, like he couldn't even fathom getting away. And what's the funny thing is, I'm sitting in the sales position in my coaching business right now. This guy takes 2 phone calls, hangs up our Google Meet video conference, takes 2 phone calls. And I'm just talking to the screen because I know this is going to be a training for the person that replaces me. I'm like, man, I hope that, like, I'm just talking to myself. I'm like, I feel for this guy. I've got to get him to join our program.
Because he couldn't have the conversation with you completely because he had to take calls while he was
he's like, hold on, this is an investor. I've got to take this call. It's an investor. And he's like, hold on, I've got to take this call. It's a seller of mine. And I'm like, so that's like an extreme example of selling all the homes, traditional success, but no freedom whatsoever. So that is my goal. Like I told him at the end of the day, I'm like, we have to figure out a way for you to be able to afford this program because I told him, I said, I'm an accomplice to whatever happens to you now. So now I'm like, I'm all bought in. And the point of telling that story is that now my heart is with this guy
because of the ministry.
Because now the business is totally different
now.
Exactly. But even more so, like this is life or death for this guy. And normally,
give me a success story. So if Jim's on the sad side of it, how have you taken that Jim or whatever his name was and turned him into somebody who has an integrated, balanced life? Yeah.
So I've got a guy that real faithful guy, but he was working about 100 hours a week when I met him. His wife, Jenny, his name is Dave. His wife, Jenny, was...
So what I'm gathering from this whole thing is don't get into real estate. Oh my gosh.
I mean, it's really bad. So he was working a lot. His wife, Jenny, was pregnant with their first child. And he was ready to give up. He came from a lineage of real estate. So his dad owned a brokerage for 40 or 50 years or whatever. And we just went down the journey of building a business. Now he owns multiple businesses. He works like 2 days a week. They've got 3 kids. I think the youngest is like 3 or 4 years old now. And now he has the freedom to show up for his family like his dad was not able to do for him as a kid. So it's like, it's breaking cycles generational stuff. It's breaking it. And I have like dozens of stories like that. But now my motivation, I tell them at the end of the call, I'm like, you're going to invest in this. I'll guarantee a 5 times return. And the only motivation is to get you on the other side of this program, tears streaming about how awesome we did together in this program.
That's awesome.
And that's the motivation at this point.
Okay. So then how's this benefited you? Like what are the rewards? Because when you make the business about you, the reward is money or status or
and
fame.
Stress. A lot of stress when you make it about you.
When you brought God into your business and you refocused to be more about service and other people, loving and serving people is what you said. As that's been integrated into your business, what's been the reward, the benefit back to you?
Yeah, so the immediate reward was just a sigh of relief. To chase and perform and like to be a high performer is exhausting, right? It's like I was on this path before my faith. I was on this path of never ending achievement. And it was just like, you're running on this treadmill that you have no control over. Like, it's just like you're running and you don't know why you're running. But I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff that kind of led up to that.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest for me when I handed the business over to God was that I don't experience much stress at all. And I'm seeking God, like, what do you want me to do in the business? I told everyone in our group, and I told Tony too, I'm like, I'm not going to go back into sales. I am not going to go back to sales.
When did you tell him that?
Like 6 months ago. Recently.
What are you doing?
I'm not only am I back in a position in the business that after 10 years of doing this coaching business, I just think I'm beyond that at this point. Not only am I back in this seat, I look forward to all the calls.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, God, what are you going to bring me now? Like what challenge or,
You're turning into a people person.
A people person. I got a one call last week with a guy that I could not crack this guy. Couldn't find an angle to sell him anything. Like I'm doing all the tricks if I even know any. And I said, man, I just got to know, do you know Jesus? He's like, what? Where did that come from?
When in doubt, ask about the
I'm just like, I feel like I need to accomplish something on this call. So at least, and he actually did know Jesus. So, but if he didn't know Jesus, I was ready just to talk to him about it at that moment.
So awesome.
Because I had no other way to do like any business dealings with him. So I'm like, well, I mean, I can't help you in business, but do you know Jesus? And he was like, yeah, I do. I'm like, okay, well, I got another call. So it's less stress. I couldn't imagine doing business without God, at the wheel, and just asking God, like, how do I need to show up in the business? It allows me to show up in my relationships with my team members differently, with less like focus, thinking about the conversation with that tough conversation with the agent.
Yeah.
What's going on with this person now? And now we have a care, we're going to put together a care fund. And, and it's a constant struggle too. Yesterday in our C12, I mean, there were like 3 things that I know I've done in the past and I got away from and I know I should be doing. And we have employees, I mean, contractors all over the world, and some of them live in, like, a girl can't afford to buy a new computer. One had a typhoon come through and her power, like her roof caved in, and
oh my God,
you know what I mean? So it's like, just internally the good that we can do now.
So is success suffered at all?
No, not. No,
like
because I think it's all success now. Even if the business is super messy, I'm just not stressed about it because it's like, what can I do today? It used to be more like an obsession on, what's the 3-year vision? What's the 1-year plan?
Like, this much revenue last year.
Like the measurables and the numbers and like, did you hit your number today? Now it's just like, are we really impacting the people that we're coming into business with? And now it's more of a focus on like, is our solution, and this is some of the influence that you've had on me, when you mentioned that all you pivoted was like, if you could just serve the client at the highest level, there's no marketing. Like you literally don't need marketing if you're just focused. And I've always been the other way. It's like lead gen, lead gen, and let's figure out the front stage. And now I think God has really shifted me into a thinking around, and especially as I'm the one bringing people in and they're sharing stuff with me that I promise you nobody knows about them, because I ask really, really deep questions, because I want to know what's going to motivate them to
Because
actually
there's
do the work.
ministry and balance perspective.
100%. And I know that I'm going to share my faith. I was talking to a girl yesterday. She shared that her daughter's husband got in a motorcycle accident. And I'm like, what's his name? You know, and I said, I don't know if you pray, but I will add him to my prayer list. And, you know, we didn't go into a conversation like, you know, let's pray right now. But, and I probably should.
Next time you should.
Yeah. I probably should. But I still took that moment. Like my first thought was, you know, it used to be like, let's just get back to like, I want to close you and like, let's move on.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's like, oh man, that's really heavy. And I could feel it in her that this was something that her family's dealing with now, you know? And so it's just but it's slow. It's been a work. It's been, you know, 2009 to 14 years, you know, and I feel like I'm just getting started in terms of like the next 10 years.
Day one, baby.
Now that I know this is a whole different game we get to play, it's going to be fun. It's going to be way more fun, way less stress. I believe the business is going to be able to
scale.
Yeah, scale now that I have just the different
vision. But the
vision
impact is so much greater.
100%. Because people feel your motivation. Because I'm not attached to any outcome now in the business. I'm just attached to changing their life so they can get a little bit more breathing room, so they can show better in their. I'm
homes. Ready to sign up for B School.
Let's do it.
Like, come on. I'm not putting in 100 hours a week.
It'll take you 10 minutes to get your license. You know?
That's crazy.
Then you can sell some houses.
So then give our listeners, our watchers, you know, if they have a business or whatever, give them some encouragement, give them some reason why implementing, and you've done already a great job. Like I'm so fired up right now. I'm like, come on, you know, give me a nugget, give them a nugget of something good of the importance, the impact of putting ministry, God in your business for the benefit of the customer, the client.
Yeah, I would say it's exhausting to have the business on your shoulders. So I think maybe more of a mindset shift. The benefit of handing the business over to God. I think it's this actual, you know, at one point we had an org chart where, you know, there was Jesus as CEO, and just seeing that, you know, on a regular basis, where this is not my business. You know, I think business owners tend to it's so heavy. You know, we feel the weight of, you know, we know the overhead. We know, you know, that every 2 weeks money comes out. Like money's got to keep going. You know, nobody else is thinking in that way. So we tend to get triggered in the business, and our teams don't understand that. You know, so just handing the business over. Maybe it's a, you know, you sign something and you're like, you just hand it over to God. I think that's just the mindset. Like, this is not my business. I'm just here to steward this business and to manage it, and to do it in a way where it's obvious that if someone were to come into this business and talk to my team members, that, man, you know, Lars has changed over the last 5 or 6 years. You know, he's still has glimpses of like the numbers guy, and like, you didn't hit your numbers. I think God gave me that part too. So I will defend that part. But it's like, this is not my business. You know, it's God's business. Luckily enough, he gave me this business, just like my kids and my wife. You know, I get to enjoy them and try to influence them in a good way, but I can't control it.
Well, I've known you for a long time, and I can't be more proud of you. You know, thinking back to the early cores, we're members of a C12 group here in Charlotte, and you have to bare your soul in these cores. And the early days of you doing it, man, it was so numbers focused. And I'd see your spreadsheets, you put them up on the screen, and it was just, you know, you love that, I love that. But it was so not personal. And then to hear you now for the last 40 minutes just talk about the person on the other side of the phone, on the other side of Zoom, or the person you get to meet with, and how your heart's changed. The business is more successful today than it was before.
No, I'm going to tell a quick story to put a pin in this whole thing. That first core where I got hit over the head by the guys in the room, we were at the top of our game, running at $225,000 a month of revenue. I came into that core like, our business has never been stronger. And
Really?
because the business had scale to, at that point it was like 2.6 million, running great, profits were great. And the whole team was like, one of our members said, it's not broken, but it's as bent as it could be before it breaks.
It's ready to snap.
And so that was like a come to Jesus.
That was the first 2x4.
That was the first 2x4. And this last core that I just did, so this is my 5th or 6th core, the business is half the size.
That business.
That business. And I've got another business.
You're still...
But the point is that really I'm rebuilding this coaching business at this time. I've never been more excited about it. I've never felt less pressure, and so it's, and the way I show up in it is more of like, just who can I serve today versus like, look at me and this awesome business that I built.
Well, let's clarify a little bit. I don't want to get into numbers, but you are just as profitable, doing just as much.
Yes.
It's structured different.
Structured a little bit different.
Because the last thing I want to leave is somebody going, well, if you bring God into your business, it gets cut in half. The realities are you're just as profitable today. Your business is just as strong.
It's simpler. It's more profitable.
Is tenfold.
100%.
And you're not having those calls where you're getting hit over the head by somebody saying, I'm just a number. You don't care about me. Now it's just the opposite. These guys will literally, they've told us on interviews, because in these cores, you get to interview staff and customers.
And your wife.
Like, oh, yeah, and your wife. Love that one. Where they'll just run through brick walls for you.
Yeah.
And then they can tell when you're struggling. And because it's so much more personal. I can't be more proud of you and your growth, what you've done. I know your business, but man, hearing you just pour it out for the last little bit, I'm like, I'm not changing my career, but I could see why you've had so much success, because you're a great coach. You're a really good communicator, and your heart is in a amazing place. So I'm glad we were able to do this. This isn't going to be the only time you've been on the show, but thanks for coming. Thanks for sharing your heart, and thanks for letting us into the glimpse of what God's doing in your life and your business. It's been awesome.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, brother.